Hello, Internet! Welcome to this installment of Ask Hua Li, a place where you, a bunch of strangers, seek from me, a relatively unknown rapper, advice that you could easily Google yourselves. Please don't forget that a prerequisite for this exchange is that you write questions in to bit.ly/askhua-li. That's bit.ly/askhua-li. Our question this time around comes from Very Porous, and they write, Dear Hua Li, lately it seems like every other meme I see is about making strong boundaries, or having boundaries violated, or communicating boundaries, and I don't get it. Don't boundaries prevent people from getting to know each other? How are we supposed to make friends and date people in 2020 if everyone has boundaries of steel? Sincerely, Very Porous. Well, Very Porous, I'm so happy you asked me this question because I spent the better part of the last year in both individual and couples therapy, and I consider myself to be kind of a superficial expert on the topic of boundaries. First off, I totally understand the confusion around the term boundaries. Without really defining the term, it seems like something that kind of expresses, like emotional unavailability or simply really having walls up between each other. So I want you to think of boundaries as our ability to understand and communicate how it is that we want to be treated by other people. We shouldn't look at boundaries as being restrictive or selfish, but rather as a means to delineate ourselves from the other people in our lives and those people from the shared space that we have in our interactions. When we lack boundaries, it can lead to codependency and resentments. And it can often look like being easily tired or burnt out, finding it really difficult to speak up for oneself, or avoiding difficult conversations, which usually leads to passive-aggressive behavior. Rather than thinking of boundaries as something that keeps us apart, think of it more like saying to someone, if you want to interact with me, this is how I want to be treated. I would tend to argue that effective boundaries are a means for us to become closer to each other. Trust is built on respecting both your partner and yourself. If you don't truly respect yourself, you will find yourself compromising for the other people in your life in order to keep them around you. And that kind of unequal compromise will often leave you feeling depleted, and as such, you'll pull away from the people in your life. Setting effective boundaries has to start from yourself. For instance, if I start feeling agitated, I will check in with myself and say, am I hungry? Am I tired? If I discover that I'm agitated because I'm not meeting one of my basic needs, maybe I'll say to the person I'm with, hey, I would love to keep talking to you, but I've really got to eat something, so we need to put this conversation on hold. We should do this for ourselves too when we're not around other people. Like if you're binge watching TV and you know how you have to wake up the next day, you're setting effective boundaries for yourself by saying, I need to put this on pause. When you're able to identify what causes you agitation or frustration or anger in your life, you're identifying what your needs are, and that helps you discover what your boundaries should be. You'll be developing the skills to understand what motivates the way that other people feel because you're learning what motivates those feelings for yourself. So one part of understanding boundaries is understanding how it is that you want people to interact with you. But the other part is how to communicate that effectively. Oftentimes, I think when we interact with people, we assume that they know how we want to be interacted with. Sometimes people need to be told, and there is a nice way to tell people. If you say to someone, every single time you chew too loudly, it makes me want to blow my brains out, they're going to get defensive. However, if you say something like, hey, I discovered that I have a pet peeve against chewing sounds, and when you chew with your mouth open, I can't help but have this kind of reaction within me. And I was wondering if we could kind of chat about how we can mitigate that. Really, really different kind of tone. I would say the more you get to know people and the more you interact with them, the more important boundaries become. It's really important for two people to acknowledge what they need out of social interactions and what's too much. When we're able to acknowledge these things, it creates an environment for two people to feel like individuals and feel respected as individuals and share a common space of interaction. I think that's kind of the ideal scenario for any type of relationship. So very porous, I hope that cleared up some of your confusion about what boundaries are and the way that we can use them to have better, more intimate connections with the people around us. So everyone, that concludes this installment of Ask Hua Li. Thank you so much, everyone. And please, if you enjoyed this video, follow me, share it, subscribe, etc.